A first-round tackle his own coach says was built in a lab. A sixth-rounder who nearly walked away from football to work at FedEx. And a GM who taped reminders of failure on his office walls all offseason. 7 picks, every story, every angle. This is the Gray Mains draft breakdown, and it starts right now. Forward down the field.
Busts it outside left. Jameer down to the 10. Jameer to the 5. Jameer to the end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions.
And off Berry. Skirts to the left side. Breaks the tackle. And he will take it in. Touchdown.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions. That's what I'm talking about. It is caught. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Oh, baby, what a play that time. Aiden Hutchinson read that and blew it up. Big time stand by that defense.
Okay, Lions fans, can you believe that we have a bunch of new players on our team? And yes, also, can you believe after 16 hours of live streaming this past weekend, the Lions Gray Mains are here to deliver more for you, the Detroit Lions fans. My name is Chris Stone. I'm at castahead.net. And the two gentlemen on my screen who also joined me all weekend for the draft, Dan Keener from the great state of Ohio. DK, how we doing tonight, man?
I am doing really well. I had a great weekend, and I'm glad you all made it home safe and sound, including Brent, who only had to walk about 10 feet. But everybody's back to their respective regional headquarters. So, all doing well.
Yeah, it was an absolute blast. Brent Kreider, DBC, the Chief Intelligence Officer of Lions Optimism. Brent, thank you once again for hosting at the Southern Command Center in Phoenix City, Alabama, where the skies are dripping with blue Kool-Aid and Lions cornbread. We appreciate you having us down. Brent, how are we feeling? How are you doing after the weekend as we lead into the show tonight?
Got a little bit of a cold, so you guys might hear me cough at some point. But other than that, feeling great about what the Lions did over the weekend and really looking forward to digging into this. I sense an enthusiasm from Brad Holmes in his interview. I think he, like us, realizes that the Lions needed some refreshment, and they took care of it.
Absolutely, yeah. We're going to get into what kind of the Holmes, just the vibe that he gave. I just felt like he had a more vulnerability, guys. He was like, listen, we didn't make the playoffs. I'm posting this stuff on my wall. And then he put that out in the press conference. And of course, all the beat writers are like, what did you post on your walls? And he's like, well, I'm not going to tell you exactly what I posted, but we didn't make the playoffs. We have some stuff to work on. And speaking of stuff to work on, Donkey Kong 43 says, let's go. Happy Tuesday. We appreciate you in the house. And of course, Wanda Rich is in the house. And I've got chats that are going all over the screen here right now. So we're just going to do this. Hi, guys. I've been eagerly awaiting the show. Guess I was soiled over the weekend. Here's Chris Brent. Maybe spoiled.
I think that's supposed to be spoiled.
Spoiled, yes, we know.
Yes, Wanda says yes. She was spoiled. So Wanda, thanks for clarifying that. You almost made this into a show we could not broadcast as a family.
Yes.
Family thing.
Change that rating.
And then Baltimore Avenue Studios, great shows on each day, bringing the draft. Hey, thank you so much for doing that. And I just want to go ahead and thank everyone who did join throughout the 3 days. The last show especially, just incredible how many people showed out for day 3. That's how we know, guys, that our fans are our nerds, because day 3 is like the day you're just like, who is this guy? Who's this guy that's got 3 names out of Texas Tech? I've got to figure out what he did, what's going on. And now we're nerding out through this stuff and we're finding out just maybe what Brad Holmes was doing. So guys, we're going to get into the draft. We're going to pull it apart. We're going to talk about the each one of the 7 picks that we made during the draft, but we're also going to be talking about the undrafted free agents, because there's a few little stories in here, how it plays into the depth chart, and Dan's got it all down here. But, listen, we always do this first and foremost on every Gray Mains podcast. We start the show with everything that you need to know in terms of Lions news outside of the draft here on the Rundown from our man, Dan Keener.
All righty. Well, let's just start off the bat with breaking news from today. Dan Miller scored an exclusive comment, basically, that kind of confirmed what we thought would happen. We put up an article on this back on March 1st that we fully expected Gibbs to be given the fifth-year option while they continue to negotiate a long-term deal. And then we expected Campbell to not be given the fifth-year option because the numbers are just absolutely, I'm not even going to say the word ridiculous. They're just absolutely stupid, right? It would have been the fifth-year option based on the way the formula works is it takes the top five and then they like project the actual income for that position from the tag, the franchise tag for the next couple of years out. So it would have actually been more average per year than what the top linebacker is currently earning, which I believe might be Micah Parsons, which is also another issue when you're lumping these premium pass rush linebackers in with like middle linebackers and everything else. But that's for another day. So that's the story there, kind of as we expected. So we'll see Gibbs tagged officially probably tomorrow or the next day. And if you go to our website, we have a link out there. The story we wrote was on March 1st. It kind of outlines what Holmes has done the last several years. I think this is his fifth opportunity to exercise a fifth-year option. What he's done with the guys in the past, Akuda and Sewell and all these guys, and how he's done it and when he's done it. So it's interesting read if you get a chance to go out there.
Dan, I want to underline this because I think for someone who may be more casual and doesn't understand sort of the logistics of contracts, this is not an indication of how the Lions feel about Jack Campbell. Right? This is
not at all.
Absolutely, this is a player they are absolutely going to lock down for as many years as they possibly can because he is the jackhammer, the middle linebacker of the Detroit Lions. And so when someone sees, Gibbs got the 50-year option, and they see this kind of stuff, they think, well, what does that mean about Jack Campbell not, getting that? I think everyone needs to relax. This is no indication of no negative indication, right, of how they feel about Jack Campbell, right?
Yeah, and let's just go back to that draft day when they took these guys. This is exactly why all the pundits screamed and panned Holmes for taking two non-premium guys in the first round, because if they pan out, you have to pay them premium dollars. Well, you know what? I don't think anybody in Allen Park really gives a flying hoot about that at this point. We've got two Pro Bowlers.
Right.
Like Gibbs is maxed out Pro Bowl and Campbell is one step behind him. So you know what? As I think Brad said, positional value be darned, whatever.
Right.
Back in the day, and we're reaping the rewards, and you know what? It's well worth it. This is homegrown talent. This is how good GMs and good teams survive, right?
Right.
You don't worry about it. You bring in your guys.
All
All right, let's move on to the next one here. A couple of guys have some updated numbers. Hassanin has he was at some weird number 61 when they brought him back last year, and he has now acquired 99, which I think suits him. Hopefully he does really well this year as a situational pass rusher, and he gets a lot of sacks, And we forget all about AQM and his one-hit wonder year. And just off the screen to the left, Tyler Lacey's new locker and number. He is now number 93. He spent a lot of time last year kind of bouncing back and forth with the practice squad and bottom of the roster. And so he never really had a clean number either. So he was able to pick up 93. So that's in addition to the rest of the ones we posted on the site. We have an updated list for who we know. Put it out there a few weeks ago. You can dig through the site and find that or do a quick search on it. Next item. Hey, another Lion got married. This time it's tight end Brock Wright. Congratulations to the Wrights. We've had I think this is the third announcement we've seen this offseason so far, right? Plus a couple baby announcements.
Yeah, draft season and marriage season, right?
Well, it's the off season, right?
Right.
We want to see the marriage season happen during the downtime. I'm not so sure about the baby season because you add 9 months to like March and you're kind of in the middle of the season. So,
Yeah.
we'd rather see those happen about August. So maybe September.
Right
But
on.
congratulations to the Wrights. Nice looking couple.
Awesome.
Yep. Another kind of new, I wouldn't say breaking news, but it's more about who and what they are than and what they represent. Brad Holmes had two visits from veteran wide receivers today. As you guys probably heard us over the weekend say, the formula that drives comp picks at as of noon on Monday was no longer in effect. So veterans that are out there that haven't signed no longer impact whether you add or lose comp picks. So I think we're projected to get like a sixth at this point right now. But we had two veteran wide receivers in. The first was Scotty Miller. And the
Wait,
second
Scotty
was
Anderson's back on the Lions?
Scotty Anderson. Quick, what round was he drafted in what year?
Fifth round, 2003. I don't know.
Yes.
I
He was a misfire. We'll just call him
yeah,
that.
you think?
So Mr. Miller, and then as you can see, Prochet, James Prochet formerly of the Baltimore Ravens, and both of them were brought in. The interesting nugget about both these guys is they're both very much in that vein of a I won't say smaller, but they're kind of in that like 5'9" to 5'11" range, $175 to $185. Primarily special teams guys, kick returners, punt returners, and gunners. So
Yep.
Brad is definitely not resting on his laurels. You had Lovett, who was drafted last year, that kind of was supposed to be the long-term replacement for Khalif Raymond, and you've got Kennedy still on the roster, and then they went out and drafted Law. So you've
Lovett's
got
gotta be
five
sweating.
guys now.
Lovett's got to be
Yeah, if
sweating.
I'm Lovett, I'm sweating bullets.
Yep.
And speaking of that, it looks like DJ Reader is going to be signing with the Giants. We talked
Yep.
about this last week, and then over the weekend, again, the comp formula, so they can give him, $5 million a year, $6 million for a 1-year deal or something, and not have it impact their ability. I think they had a third round comp on the books right now, and that would have wiped that out had they signed him before them. Not a done deal yet, but multiple national guys have posted about it over the last 72 hours. So it looks like it's going to happen. And frankly, we replaced him with one of our UDFAs. We'll get into that later. We drafted a couple defensive tackles late, but neither one of them is like a big, massive run stuffer.
Right.
They're more in that like 3-tech vein. And they could be an undersized nose tackle if you need quickness in there. But the kid we signed as a UDFA, he fits the bill as like, you stuff this guy in the net and nothing's getting past him, right? So he would be a Reader opportunity. So what you got next, Chris? Oh, Super Troopers 3. This is just a personal favorite of mine. If you like Super Troopers 1 and 2, which I did, I am a sicko. Super Trooper 3 is coming out. It does look pretty hilarious. The trailer's out there. It is very much not safe for work. So if you're watching it, watch it at home. If your kids are around, volume down and turn the screen. So we'll leave it at that.
When did we become movie pimpers? I
It's
didn't.
part of the rundown at the bottom of the rundown, and you could go back to Monday Morning Quarterback for this, and that's where my
Super
inspiration for that
Troopers
came
3.
from. The bottom of Monday Morning Quarterback, which Albert Breer currently writes, is at the very bottom is just some dumb stuff that just interests the person that's putting the article together. So at the end of every Monday you're going to see 2 or 3 things. Stuff like the Pistons with their fake Chuck Converse, Chuck Taylor Converse shoe filled with the booze and ice cream, things like that. The Zamboni chicken tender basket, things like that show up down there. So you're going to get another one next week on there, but it's not a movie. It's a
I must have
TV
missed
show.
Super Troopers 1 and 2. So
No,
anyway,
you're just an old fart.
It's never too late to catch up, Brett.
Brett puts the gray in the gray mains.
The gray mains. That's right. All right.
UDFA agreements. We're going to go through
Yes.
these a little more in detail
Yep.
on this later in the show for sure.
Yeah, so on the UDFA agreements, really the main thing is we only signed 9. We had 14 slots available after the draft, so we signed 9 guys. I was online till about 10:30, 11 at night. Nothing else popped up and hasn't since. So clearly Brad's going to bring in some more veterans. Probably looking at dudes that shake loose after the draft. We see he's already had 2 wide receivers brought in. we could use some more linebacker depth and defensive tackle depth, and pretty much depth anywhere at this point. You'll take it. But of note, out of the 9 guys we signed, 2 were edges. They did grab the quarterback, Altmaier from Illinois, but the one guy they spent a lot of time on, Haynes King, actually signed. I don't remember who it was with, but they signed, I think it's Carolina, signed him about an hour before we signed Illinois or before it was announced. And then we grabbed a tight end, an offensive guard, a cornerback from USF, and then a DB, Amaris Brown from UNLV. He's listed as a cornerback, but he can move to safety, it appears. And then lastly, we signed the number 1 HBCU prospect that was in the draft. His name is Eric Hunter. He's a linebacker. He's decent size. He actually instantly becomes the fastest linebacker on our roster.
Yeah.
I think he's in the 4.4s, high 4.4 speed. So looks like a very physical specimen. Hopefully it's a kid that can easily convert to a special teams role and maybe develop down the line into a contributing member of the defense in the rotation. So, but the interesting thing, before we move off, I'll just say this and then hand it off to Chris and Brent. The interesting thing is who we didn't bring in this weekend. The previously mentioned Amaris Brown of UNLV, who is listed as a DB, kind of one of those hybrid guys, could be safety, cornerback, nickel guy, whatever. He is the only player out of the draft picks in the UDFAs that is actually considered a safety. So that coupled with Brad Holmes's information he provided, which Chris will get into here in a second, or Brent, about an update on Mr. Branch and Mr. Joseph, seemed to bode well for our safety room. And I know Brett did a little research and he would love to share what he saw about what I've been saying. He never believed me, and now I think he's a believer now. So I'll turn it over to you guys. I'm done talking. I took a lot of time.
Awesome. Thank you for putting that together. And I want to make mention for those that are watching and listening. Dan puts a lot of effort and a lot of work. Thank you, Dan, for that in putting it together. On the website, thegraymains.com, the Monday morning rundown. It includes everything plus Super Troopers on that Monday rundown, and then anything that comes in between Monday and now Tuesday evening when we go live. We'll add to that, and of course that'll end up on the next Monday rundown. So just an FYI, if you're like, man, I've been so busy all week, what's going on with the Lions? Just jump in on that Monday rundown and it will get you up to speed. Brent, I want to jump, before we get into the draft picks, do you have anything related to any takes on any of the stuff that Dan just ran down on the rundown that you wanted to hit on?
So what I do want to do is I want to highlight a couple articles that I read today. One was a Free Press article. These are additional news and notes that came up.
Oh, we have bonus rundown material.
It appears that the Lions are down to 3 potential victims to travel to Germany and play the Lions.
Interesting.
It looks like the Giants, Bucks, or the Patriots are the most likely opponents. And again, I've already got my flights reserved with Crystal, so looking forward to meeting up as many of you as can go. Simon's committed to going, and looking forward to having a great time with the old Lions List reunion over in Germany. Second is that the Free Press did a summary, Detroit News did an analysis on grading how the Lions filled their holes in free agency in the draft. I'll cut to the chase. The Lions were viewed to have an A or a B in everything except for linebacker. And so what the signing of Eric Hunter tells me is that Holmes acknowledges that the Lions had some need at linebacker, and to the point that Dan was discussing, because of the commitments, they signed him to a 3-year deal, $3.125 million, including a $25,000 signing bonus, $175,000 guaranteed, an average annual salary of $1.041 million. Highly unusual for an undrafted rookie free agent to get that kind of a deal. And then to the point Dan was talking about, he's been a staunch believer that the Lions wouldn't address the safety position in the offseason because he felt like they had plenty of depth. And then on the heels of Brad Holmes announcing that he feels like Kirby and Beebe are on their way to recovery and that they'll be ready for the season at some point. Of course, we all know Brian Branch probably won't be ready for the season until November, but it'd be better to get him late than never just because of his playmaking ability. But I will acknowledge that Dan has long maintained that the depth that the Lions have at the safety position is very strong. And I had done some research on PFF, and believe it or not, Kirby Joseph is lower rated on PFF at safety than all of the backups that the Lions have. So go figure, right? Dan didn't necessarily know that because he didn't have a subscription to PFF. But when I was looking at the PFF ratings, pretty amazing that the four remaining safeties have a higher PFF score than he does. So that's good news for Lions fans that were worried about the safety position. I was in that group.
All right, right on. So I think that could put that will assuage people who feel like, Brian Branch coming late November, late October, early November is kind of like what everybody is thinking. And then does he come back at 80%? Does he come back at 90%? We'll see how that bodes, and then what's going on with Kirby's knee. Apparently, Brad feels a little bit more optimistic than maybe I did going into the draft, because they just really had a lot of opportunities to get safeties. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to shift into the picks, and then we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about these undrafted free agents that we got, because it does matter. And a Tampa Lions fan joining in is, and we're going to get to this question because there are a couple Wolverines that were drafted, and we were talking about even another Wolverine potentially in Rayshon Benny getting drafted, but he fell like a rock during the draft. So we're going to talk about that. I personally don't think he looks at being Wolverine happy. A lot of people have said that, he picks too many Alabama guys, he picks whatever. I think he's looking at the player. He's not necessarily looking at their college jersey as it relates to him being a favorite, and certainly is not trying to placate any local fans for that matter. So we're going to get into it. So let me first start here. Number 1 pick, Blake Miller. We call him Balake for reasons, for Key and Peele reasons. The right tackle out of Clemson, round 1, number 17. Brent, let's start with you. Walk us through what you see with Blake Miller on film. What makes Blake Miller a first-round right tackle?
Well, when you first look at the pick, there were folks who were arguing for other players over him. And the reality is the Lions had a huge hole at right tackle. We all were hopeful that Borum could step in and play the position, but realistically, you're not going to go very far if you're relying upon Borum to be your starting right tackle and be able to control the line of scrimmage like the Lions like to do. So when the Lions selected Blake Miller, I was absolutely of the opinion that we should try and trade down. We still could have gotten him a few picks later and stockpile picks. We didn't. We picked and absolutely got the right guy for what our needs were. The things that stand out about Blake Miller, number one, first and foremost, and Brad Holmes hit on this in his interview on Fox with Dan Miller, was that he was a player who developed year after year and got better and better and better. He's a fantastic pass blocker. Run blocking needs a little bit of work, but that's something that you can teach. He is very physical. There were a number of highlights where he was knocking guys into the ground, and he loves to be nasty. So what I think the Lions' commitment to the run and the play action pass with the selection of Blake Miller gives us the chance to be more balanced like we were 2 years ago and 3 years ago versus how we were last year, where as soon as Jared Goff got back in the pocket, pressure was coming from all over the place. You guys hit on this in Dan's news and notes section with the left guard position up for competition. That really is the only position I think that we need to shore up in terms of somebody either needs to step up and get better or not. But Blake Miller adds if you look at his RAS score, and I think that's in the drive there, Chris. If you get a chance to pop it up, in comparison to the RAS score of our outgoing right tackle who will probably sign with the Bears now. uh, he was a warrior for all those years. Absolutely, he'll retire a Detroit Lion. Have the greatest respect for him and how he sacrificed and fought over the years. But I think we're stepping up significantly in terms of Blake Miller's athletic ability, his physicality, and just frankly his youth and the lack of
Yeah.
damage that he suffered over the years. Blake
His-
Miller's
Yeah.
the right pick for the Lions.
Let me roll
His
this to
health, too.
Dan. Dan, so this I wanted to get your take on this because you
Mhm.
know after these players get drafted, they do this huge Zoom call with all the beat writers and the coaches and the player, and I would say most of the time you're going to get that player's head coach that's going to join the call. And one thing I noticed is that Dabo Swinney had some of the most glowing praise I've ever heard a college coach give about a draft pick. And Dabo, like I've heard him talk about some of his other players. He said like Miller, his quote was like he was made in a lab, and that they're in so. In you, and he was absolutely glowing about it. In your experience, Dan, you've covered draft evaluations for years. How rare is it that you get that kind of endorsement from a coach that is like, I mean, he's worried about other stuff, right? Clemson had an awful season, right? He's worried about everything, but he decided he's going to join that call and talk about how much that Blake Miller meant to the Clemson organization. I just wanted to kind of maybe get your take on that.
Well, I think every coach, with maybe the exception of a certain tackle and a certain retired Alabama coach, gave glowing endorsements
Right.
of their players.
Caden
But
Proctor.
we were going to trade up for him like 4 different times,
Oh,
don't you
God,
know?
thank God.
Dabo's going to give a legitimate, heartfelt, response. He cares about his players. But I will, and I hate to say this because it's not a slight against Miller because I think Miller is outstanding.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Dabo realized that, you hit on it. His program's a bit down from where it's been in the past.
Yep.
And he had potentially 3 number 1 draft picks, first round draft picks, and he only got 1. So Woods didn't get in there, and I
Right.
can't remember who the other kid was. Was it a cornerback? But they were supposed to have 3 dudes that potentially would be late round first rounders, and they were not picked. So, as a head coach, you're selling your program as much as you are your players, and I 100% believe everything you said about Blake is 100% true. I
Mm-hmm.
think he was just being a little more emphatic because that was his best asset to sell at the point in time for his program. Ryan Day doesn't need to sell his program. He's just like, yeah, dude, we had 3 dudes just drafted in the top 10 or 11. I mean, he doesn't need to sell that. But Clemson, who's a program that's struggling, that they needed that little extra boost, and and good for Dabo. I mean, he's selling his players. It's not just about the program either. It is about the players. You want players to come to your program that have a chance to develop. And Blake Miller is a classic case. I mean, I know all about him. He was in hot contention. Ohio State was in hot contention to get him
Oh,
as a recruit 5 years ago.
didn't know that.
And he's an Ohio kid, and he ended up going to Clemson, and they're coming off some of their natties. And frankly, the offensive line coach at Ohio State at the time wasn't up to par in terms of recruiting and development. And he went down there and he made the right decision. He was developed into a first round draft pick, and now he gets to come up to the same area where he grew up. It's just around the lake a little bit, but now he gets to come back to this area and as a first round pick and play for the Lions. So
Yeah, love
but
it.
yeah, good stuff. I really like it. I mean, I think somebody put in their character in our internal chat, and
Mm-hmm.
and as I mentioned, health is also another thing. I mean, that's one of our biggest problems the last couple of years. Your best ability is your availability,
Yeah.
and these kids, we've had a lot of guys that haven't been available, and they are top tier talents. I mean, that's one of the reasons, Brent, to your point, Kirby Joseph is not our worst ranked player at safety when he's healthy, but he wasn't healthy last year. That dude was playing on 1.5 legs all season before they shut him down, and you could see it. He just didn't have the explosiveness, the range. The mind was working, but the body was just not going where his mind needed it to go. And I think that contributed to his numbers being slightly down.
Yeah, I also loved how Miller has a wrestling background. It's like I think it's Iowa where they won't even consider anybody in the program on the offensive line unless they have a wrestling background. It's like, oh, you haven't
He had to
wrestled
be at
in high
least third in the
school,
state.
right? Exactly. And his work ethic is insane. He talked about that 95-degree wrestling room. His parents' work ethic, his mortgage and real estate. So being like, that modeling it in his home is super important. But I just love, in watching the film, I love the way the guy finishes. Yes, he's a little too upright. Yes, his pass blocking may not be stellar yet. But if he's going to play the right side, he's not on the blind side, and you've got a guy that you're going to put at the right tackle. It's going to start right away and could be a solid contributor for the Lions for years to come. Guys, let's get to the second round, because this one got a little nutty. The second round pick came via the Jets because we had to trade up to 44, give up one of our fourth round picks to get Derek Moore, the edge rusher out of Michigan. Brent, let's start with you now. The pass rush upside is obvious, but Moore made it a point on this interview of saying that he takes pride in his run defense. It feels people have kind of, cut him down on that. Like he's just a one-trick pony trying to be Aiden Hutchinson and not getting the sack record. What did you see? You watched him every Saturday, as I did, being a Michigan fan. When you look at Derek Moore, and you were doing your 685,000 mock drafts, and had Derek Moore maybe in your second or possibly third round, who knows what. What did you see on tape with Derek Moore that stood out for you?
Well, let me clarify something first. According to PFF, Balake's passing grade was an 88.6, 83.5 for the whole season, but 88.6 against Penn State and South Carolina. He exceeded 80 on his pass blocking, and his run blocking was overall 73.3. So just know that he fits, I think, really well in what the Lions want to do schematically.
Okay.
He'll develop on his run block. I too, Chris, thought that he had excelled more at run blocking than pass blocking, but I had to go back and just confirm that before we moved on to Derek Moore. Now, Derek Moore, holy cow, we've needed a guy opposite of Aiden Hutchinson for how many years now, and the fans have clamored for the Lions to pick an edge that could come in, situational pass rusher. AQM did this last year. I think what the Lions are getting in Derek Moore is a young player who can be an AQM-like player, but there's the upside. He's physical, as Dan posted for the Senior Bowl and on the Gray Mains chat over the draft weekend. He took the biggest offensive lineman from Florida and knocked him, lifted him off the ground and ran over him. And so you're talking about a guy who was really physical, 4-year player, rotational player at Michigan, and his sacks, 10.5 sacks, 10 tackles for loss. You guys mentioned he was part of a rotation in the Michigan defensive line.
Right.
And so those kinds of numbers, when you're talking about a rotational player, much like two of the undrafted rookie free agents that we picked up at edge as well, there were situational pass rush specialists, and they'll come in those special packages and be able to put pressure on the quarterback in a way that we were not able to do that last year. We were very, very incapable of lining up across the front with 4 guys that could put pressure on the quarterback. I think with the players that we brought in, DJ Reader was about a 50 on the PFF ratings that we looked at from last year, and so you're replacing a guy that's long in the tooth. That we discuss this all the time about how guys get to a position to where they earn a lot of money, but their performance is not what it was when they were younger. But I think what you're going to see now is a hungrier team. Holmes said that was a priority for him, is to get younger, hungrier, and cheaper. And I think the Lions achieve all 3 here. So I'm really excited to see this this thing develop next year with the players that we've added and situational type abilities that they have.
Dan, I know when this happened, we were sitting in Alabama, you remotely in Ohio, and it was like you just jumped up and you were like, the Lions have traded up to 44, and we all knew that it was going to be. We were talking about Zion Young, we were talking about Derek Moore, we were talking about various players at
Don't
that
forget
point.
Jacob Rodriguez.
Jacob Rodriguez was in the mix. Brent's husband was in
gone.
the mix.
He was gone.
And
Miami.
but we also later saw that the Baltimore Ravens were underneath us, and there happens to be a new head coach for the Baltimore Ravens who used to be the defensive coordinator for the University of Michigan, and Jesse Minter, who was a defensive coordinator for Derek Moore. How plausible is that? I mean, everyone's kind of talking about it, but I mean, do you think that was Derek Moore the guy that they wanted all along, or they were like, I mean, what are your thoughts on maybe what happened there that we'll probably never really know?
Yeah, I mean, there's no official confirmation, but Moore himself said they were expecting a call from Baltimore. So to me, that's all I needed to hear. Right? He is from Baltimore. Now, when he moved to Ann Arbor, he transplanted his mother with him, so she was there with him instead of staying in Baltimore, which is probably a good decision.
Yeah.
But that is where he's from. You've got the entire, Wink Martindale, Minter, every other guy that's come through that John Harbaugh defense going to Michigan to play for, or, to work with the other Harbaugh. And, it seems entirely plausible. That's it. I don't think the Lions were ever going to take Zion Young. There was some questionable issues in his background. He was flirting with the no turds list. But the thing I like about Derek Moore is he reminded me of like Akeem Mesidor during the national title run. Whenever I watched a Michigan game, and I hate watch them quite a bit because I'd like to make fun of them. It's also good to scout your opponent, as Michigan well knows. So one thing I noticed is that Moore did pop off the screen, right? Every game. Like the kid had a motor. He was always making plays. And
100%.
That gets me excited. When they become a Detroit Lion, I don't give a what school they played for.
Yes.
I love it when Buckeyes become Lions. That's great. Unless they suck like Okuda, and then it's embarrassing. But I love Hutch. I love Moore. I love the addition of him. I love the addition of Rolder, who we'll talk about here in a minute. So it's great, and he's just. I'm going to move on because we got running out of time here. We want to talk about a couple of the guys, but here's the thing I just want to make about this Moore pick. Every year that Hutch has been healthy, there has been some journeyman across from him that's had a career year. Whether it was AQM last year, whether it was James Houston in his rookie year, and Hutch's, I don't know if they were in the same class. The year when Hutch was hurt, they brought in, they traded for Zadarius Smith, and he was here for like 6 games and had 4 sacks, but he was never here when Hutch was there, right? I mean, that was the worst year we had from that standpoint. But Hutch makes someone else better. So think of it this way. We heard that he may spell Hutch in instances, but he's going to get plenty of play opposite him. They're going to put the best players on the field, period.
Yeah.
So if these journeymen are racking up double-digit sacks or these massive sack numbers, what do you expect from a very experienced, and he is experienced. He's not some 2-year college player that has limited snaps. This is a kid that's got a lot of snaps, very experienced, has a mature skill set, pass rush moves, and he's got counter moves. What's going to happen when he's lined up across from Hutch? And you have a healthy Aleem McNeil in the center, and you have Tyleik Williams one more year removed from being a rookie. That defensive line could get nasty really quick.
Right. Great points. All right, so let's, in the interest of time, let's move to the next pick in round 4. Now, when it was happening, I think we're all like, and I was freaking out about our, Thanks, Dan, for making me freak out about our defensive tackle depth, because I was like, we need a defensive tackle, and we were all thinking Rayshon Benny. It's got to be Rayshon Benny. And I was thinking, well, do we take 2 Michigan players in a row? And we did take 2 Michigan players in a row.
We did not.
However, it was Jimmy Rolder, the linebacker, out of the University of Michigan, and so that was a bit of a shocker, I think, for all of us a little bit. Rolder had risen. He's an absolute stud. Another Wolverine. This guy was Brent. This guy was working at a charity golf outing for his stepfather when he got the call, and apparently he shoots in the 80s, but who knew? But Brent, you watch this guy, on Saturdays. Playmaker. Talk to us about your thoughts on Jimmy Rolder, the linebacker out of Michigan, selected by the Lions in day 3.
Yeah, he's a guy that has versatility in the position that he can play. We've in the background been debating, does he play strong? Does he play weak? Does he play middle linebacker? I think he initially slots in as a weak outside linebacker. That's what he played at Michigan, frees him up to run. He, as Brad Holmes discussed, he's genuinely very interested in making contact. He's a guy who loves to be physical, and he tackles very well. He doesn't miss a lot of tackles. So the good news is you're getting a guy that has that positional flexibility, and he can plug in really anywhere if there's a need. He'll come in, he'll back up, on the weak side, probably and work special teams heavily. He'll be a trusted tackler. And, it's an interesting question that Tampa Lions fan asked there. I don't remember the Lions drafting Michigan Wolverines players other than Hutchinson. There was, for the longest time, the Lions never drafted Michigan Wolverines. But what I think Brad Holmes is looking at and viewing, and Dan said this during the draft show, is that the Lions looked at the Michigan coaching staff. They had a lot of NFL coaches on the defensive side of the football over the last 5 years. And so going through the McDonald's and the coaches that they've had, the best part is you're getting players who understand NFL schemes, and that can't be overplayed. So let me just close it up here by saying that I think Rolder fits what our needs were. We needed a guy to replace Anzalone. He's not a one-for-one Anzalone replacement, but early days, him and Anzalone are a lot alike when Anzalone came out of Florida.
Dan, the linebacker room has been a topic for a while. Where do you think the Lions? Where do you think Rolder fits on the depth chart? And go ahead.
Yeah, this is I've been the one that's kind of been the odd man out here. I look at Rolder, I see a kid, his biggest opportunities for improvement are his blitzing and his coverage skill set, which as a weak side linebacker, that is their primary jobs, is to cover, tight ends and running backs. And, he ran at his pro day. His 40 was anywhere from, I think, a 4.6 to a 4.7 something. I heard he was nursing a bit of a hamstring, so that might have impacted his speed. So, I've been saying I think they end up slotting him to learn behind Campbell at middle linebacker, potentially. But, Brett and I have been going back and forth, and I'm coming around to the fact that I don't think it matters, right? Brad Holmes, outside of Campbell, who is clear cut the middle linebacker. I mean, he is the middle linebacker, right? Outside of him, Holmes has been building a linebacking core, much like he's been building a defensive back core that has positional flexibility. So these guys can play weak, they can play middle, they can play strong side. We've been hearing little nuggets. The tea leaves are suggesting we're going to go more 4-2-5 this year, with that fifth DB being more of a hybrid safety, corner type guy. Last year, we had 3 linebackers play 1,000 snaps out of necessity. I mean, when your two all-pro safeties go down or miss games for suspensions or whatever, it was out of necessity that those guys had to play. And, so as a result, when we lost Anzalone, we lost a big piece of our linebacking core because he was our best five-tool backer. He could cover, he could run, he could catch, he could do everything, right? Despite people getting mad at him for his coverage, he actually was a very good coverage linebacker. So, I think Rolder will take a little bit of time to develop, but he
Yeah.
absolutely will develop in my mind. Now, granted, we're talking about a fourth round pick here, so let's just temper
Yeah.
expectations.
Special teams, right?
Yeah, he will start in special teams and he will learn the ropes. And then year two, and this is kind of Rodriguez. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mike. I think Malcolm was a fifth round pick, right? And he has developed
Sixth.
a
He was a
sixth
sixth
round
round
pick,
pick. Yep.
and he's developed into, before the injury, he had that knee injury a couple of years ago that really messed him up last year, right? But he was starting to develop into a key contributor on our defense and being able to plug in. And, some guys are guys that are spot starters and spot players. Other guys are just natural born starters, right? I mean, Anzalone was a natural born starter.
Yep.
Obviously Campbell is. But we've signed Clark, which I think is a nice add. And I'm kind of excited to see what this kid that we grabbed out of Morgan State can do. I mean, he is the most athletic linebacker, at least speed wise. He's the
Upside's
fastest
huge.
kid on the roster now. He's got a
Ceiling,
huge
high
upside,
ceiling. Yes, I
and
agree.
the opportunity is there. We have six linebackers. I still fully expect them to re-sign Zach Cunningham.
Oh yeah.
He was one of our best special teams linebackers last year, and he is also a pretty athletic guy. So I fully expect them to sign him to go with Nowoski and the other folks. So we should probably have seven backers here at some point. But yeah, I love Rolder. He reminds me he's the linebacker version of Moore, right? You
Yep.
watch their games, he popped off the screen. Now, one thing about Rolder, he only started 10 games for the Wolverines. So he was a fourth or fifth year guy. So that's one of the things you're looking at if you're trying to overanalyze it. What took him so long to become a full-time starter? It's not like the Wolverines have been putting out all Americans at linebacker for the last 4 years since their national title.
He's starting
run,
to talk bad about
right?
the Wolverines, Brent.
Well,
I
no,
can
it's just a
sense
reality.
it. I'm
Tell me any of the
I'm
linebackers
kidding.
from the
I'm
Wolverines
kidding.
over the last 4 years. There's not too many of them, right? That have come to the NFL and made a name. So, but it is what it is. But I think he has shown last year he proved that he is more than adequate as a big time Big Ten starting linebacker, and he played well in the big games. One of his best games was against Ohio State. So
I think what we're getting, guys, is and Holmes referred to this in his conferences. He's talking about a particular type of player that he wants on the roster. He just this guy is a football player, right? This guy and I know that sounds super basic, but there's a certain type of player that he wants on this team. And it's somebody that doesn't have, like we talked about the no turds list and all of that kind of stuff, like somebody that loves ball, and it may not pop on the RAS, it may not pop here, and everybody's kind of going, why is Jimmy Rolder? And so this sort of is a great segue into the fourth round pick and my favorite pick and a lot of people's favorite picks, because all of a sudden, out of Arizona State, pick in the fifth round at number 157, we get Keith Abney out of Arizona State. Many folks had this guy third round. I saw some in projecting end of the second round for Keith Abney. Of course, size-wise, you're looking at a guy that, is barely maybe 5'10", played outside at Arizona, was super handsy. I know another cornerback on our team that kind of is super handsy. So we'll have to deal with that. But it kind of feels like, guys, Keith Abney, cornerback, Arizona State. Holmes said that they had him ranked a couple of rounds higher. Brent, when a GM says that about a fifth round pick, what does your analytical brain do with that information?
Well, it wasn't just the GM that said that. It was ESPN that said that. It was
right.
the NFL Network that said that.
Yeah.
In fact, a number of folks listed this as the steal of the draft.
Mm-hmm.
So it's we don't have to take Brad Holmes' his words for it. We look at the more objective folks who say this guy was supposed to go in the third round, third round. And so, what you're getting with Keith Abney is an attitude. I love watching his highlights. He's a ball hawk. He doesn't necessarily pick a lot of balls, but he made a lot of passes. He had a lot of pass defense.
Mm-hmm.
And most importantly, even if he comes in and plays special teams, he's another 4-4-5 guy. He runs well, he covers well, he's got attitude, and we love those kind of guys in Detroit. And frankly, I think just because of his size, he'll end up slotting into the slot cornerback position.
Yep.
But he does have the versatility in crunch time situations to play the outside, because he does have a pretty good, he has pretty good athletic abilities. So I think Keith Abney is absolutely a fantastic addition to the cornerback depth. And look, Holmes did a great job of adding, a bunch of players that have that kind of versatility at corner, that can play slot, that can play safety, that can, mix and match and move players around. So, Dan, your thoughts?
Yeah, Dan, this is the former inline speed skating national champion here, Dan
Yes, it
Keeler.
is.
This is a new one for the Lions
Those
locker
are
room.
impressive videos,
Right.
by the way.
He's got a better website than we do. I mean, come on, what the heck? So here's the one thing that caught my eye with Abney. Obviously, Brent summed it up great. This kid was the steal of the draft, and that's coming from a lot of the haters and a lot of the reputable folks, right? But here's the thing about Abney. He was actually rated and compared very favorably to one D'Angelo Pons.
Yeah.
One team won a national title, one team did not. And Abney, the fact that he was sitting there for us to poach in the fifth, and Pons went, I think, very early in round 2, if I remember correctly. And Pons is smaller than Abney. Definitely shorter. That to me is just a good thing. And you hit the nail on the head about the positional versatility, right? This just again strengthens the depth. If this kid turns out to be, a player and allows us to let, Khalil Dorsey go, then that is a great thing. That means the GM is doing his job. I mean, we are entering the phase of Lions of the current regime's, I guess, age or so, where we are entering the phase where we are going to be seeing fan favorites let go because they are being replaced by better players, guys that we would have loved to have had, and they're still very good players. These are good players that the Lions are going to have to cut because we're bringing in better players, because our GM is identifying guys, getting them brought in. And whether it's Rakestraw and he's, he gets cut, he's a second round pick with lots of injury history. At some point, it looks like Holmes has about a 3 to 4 year shelf life on one of his picks before he's just like, see you if they don't produce, right? Hooker's in a good example. I think Wingo this year is one that's going to be, he's going to be in that realm. Anru Zurike is probably on that. He's probably one that's got his last chance. Colby Sorsdal, all these guys that were guys we picked a couple years ago. Yeah, Manu again as well, right? I mean, these are guys.
I thought you said favorite players.
I was just saying, go away.
We rebranded Manu during the draft to a new name, but we're not going to do that because we're just not mean like that.
That's right.
Not anymore. We were mean then because we were on the air for 16 hours. So, but yeah, that's kind of that's where we're at. We're going to see good players go. But that's what we want to see. You got to get, and Brent said at the beginning of the show, we got to get faster, stronger, younger, and cheaper.
Great perspective.
And this draft accomplished that, fantastically. So
more hungry, right?
Yeah.
Get your edge back.
I love that perspective because as historically as Lions fans, especially for those of us that are longer in the tooth, we're used to seeing guys that hang around for a while and contractually we got to let them go, and then they become great players for other teams, right? And if you're a team that is in the playoffs, in contention, have great rosters every year, you're going to have to let great players go for because you have better players than them. right? And so they're going to have to go. And so I love that perspective. Guys, let's roll into pick number 5. This, as I made it I made it aware to everyone, hate's a strong word. I was not a fan of this pick when it happened. I will tell you, I've come back and now I feel better about it because like wide receiver was not really on my radar. It was more running back, defensive tackle, especially at that point at pick 5, number 168. We went the slot wide receiver out of Kentucky, Kendrick Law. Now, then we looked at it and we're like, well, this guy's just a yak guy. He's a guy that catches every pass as a bubble screen. He's catching, there's not a single pass he caught like past 3 yards. And he's a yak guy, transferred out of Alabama. Dan, this is a guy Holmes first noticed at the Georgia-Alabama game in 2024. He put a pin in that evaluation when Law went back to school. That kind of long-term scouting attention for a day 3 pick is super interesting. So what stands out to you about the evaluation process here and Kendrick Law in general, the wide receiver out of Kentucky for the Lions?
Said the same thing about Blake Miller, and he was our first round pick. Watched him for
3
years.
yeah.
But, and I'm not going to, I'll probably catch heat for this, but can we call him Kendrick St. Law? Because I remember another 5th rounder that had some yak and stuff, and he was kind of a gem. Now, just being realistic here, though, this pick here, he has potential as a receiver, clearly, but this is a pick to bring that competition, to bring that youth, to bring that next 3 years worth of guaranteed contracts to your return position, right? We don't have that right now. We've got Tom Kennedy on a 1-year RFA contract. We've got Dortch on a 1-year rookie or UDFA agent contract, right? We're still looking for guys. You brought the 2 guys in today that are primarily returners, right? So this is a chance to bring in somebody to compete with Lovett from last year, who is I believe he's actually more athletic and explosive than Lovett was or is.
Stronger for sure.
Stronger and maybe a better receiver too. I mean, Lovett had his chances last year and he didn't really grab it by the horns, right? So, this is just Brad saying, I'm making my roster better and I don't care. I don't care that I have a 7th round pick from last year that I brought in. I'm bringing in another guy and let him compete because this is 2 positions that are open, that 5th, 6th wide receiver spot, as well as that primary kick returner, punt returner role. And this kid, he's got speed. He's a yards after catch guy. Like I said, he was a gadget guy at UK. They just tossed it to him and let his natural ability and his vision go through. And I think that's one of the things that Brad saw. I mean, we all have seen bubble screens. At least I laugh at them because I always call them those rinky-dink college offense nonsense, right? Chuck it out there and maybe you get like 5 yards, whatever. But guess what? Sometimes they pop them for like 80, right?
Yep.
And the thing you have where that bubble screen, which this kid has plenty of returns, under his belt, but the thing about a bubble screen is you catch that ball, you are catching the ball. You are not looking to your right or to your left to see what is coming at you. And there's a lot of guys coming at you. There's big steamrollers coming at you from the D line, linebackers flowing towards you like raptors, and then safeties and cornerbacks that are fighting through wide receivers who generally are not the best of blockers, depending on the team. And you're expecting to get popped, within the next 2 or 3 yards after catching the ball. Well, when you catch that ball and turn, then it's about instincts. Then it's about vision. Then it's about, looking ahead and finding out where can I maximize my yards after catch. And I think that's where the vision is for this kid with Law, where they see him as a kick returner, punt returner, a guy that just adds another weapon to the offense potentially down the road, But again, he's a 5th round pick. He's a special teamer. Convert him into a gunner. Make sure he can use that 4.45 speed to go down and tackle guys.
There it is.
And we'll see where it's at.
I think he's a return guy. I think with that quick twitch movement that he has, I believe that the Lions are going to give him every opportunity to be the punt return guy, losing Khalif. But with his speed and his ability to make those quick twitch movements, that's my hope.
Yeah. He's competing against Jacob Sailors, Tom Kennedy, and Greg Dortch. I like his chances.
Yeah,
Yeah, old
stack it up that
Dorch.
way.
Yeah.
I'm making fun of Dortch. He's actually a
Well,
pretty accomplished
he
punt
is. He's
returner.
accomplished, but like when you look at his numbers versus Kendrick Law, you're just sort of like, well, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see how they play for sure.
But he's a north-south guy, right? We
Yep.
talked about this on draft day. The kid doesn't dance. He just hits it right up in there and goes, gets as many yards as he can.
Yeah.
And that was Raymond's flaw. For everyone he popped, he got dropped for a -2 yards or a no gainer because he ran like 20 yards, but it was usually left or right.
Guys, the last couple of picks here, we'll do this rapid fire, and we'll get the UDFA's I think on another show because we're running over time. But these are picks I think are very interesting, and I understand like when you're talking about the 6th round people, you're talking about the 7th round pick. Chances are these guys are not going to make our roster. Let's just be honest. However, you're telling me there's a chance, right? And I tell you what, after hearing the story of Skylar Gilhoward, the defensive tackle out of Texas Tech, man, if there's a guy I'm rooting for, it is this guy. 6th round guy out of Texas Tech. This may be the most compelling personal story in the entire draft. He's a former Division II linebacker, like Upper Iowa. He worked at FedEx, almost gave up football entirely. Got a call from Northern Illinois to switch to defensive tackle, and he ended up at Texas Tech. This is like and then on the draft day, his brother, right? Let me see if I can. He's got his brother was shot and killed 3 years ago. So on draft day, he goes and visits his brother's grave on the Thursday before the draft, and he tells his brother that he starts talking to his brother about the draft, and he says, I'm going to take wherever I go, I'm going to take you wherever I go in the league. And he has this photo of his brother that he brings with him, and he sits down and he's watching the draft with his grandfather, I guess. And
Yep.
he's in this house with his grandfather, and his grandfather has one football hat, one hat in his entire house. And that hat is the Detroit Lions hat. The only one that he's got in the entire house. And he gets drafted by the Lions, and he walks that hat in and he gives it to him. And he says, this is meant to be. I mean, guys,
Fate.
I mean, that's the stuff. That's the kind of like, they make movies out of stuff like that, right? Guys, let's just talk about that. Like, let's talk. Obviously, he's a 6th round pick. He's a smallish defensive tackle, right? He's got tons of motor, right? They use all these words like motor and all of that. But he's like a mini Aleem McNeil, I guess, if I'm going to, not the biggest guy, but he's quick, he's relentless, he's instinctive. Guys, if he's going to fit anywhere on the Detroit Lions, where does he fit in this defensive tackle rotation?
Well, I mean, I'll jump in first, Dan, but
Yeah, go ahead.
wasn't soon to be Hall of Famer Larry Donald 290 something. There's a thing about small players.
Aaron Donald?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Aaron Donald.
That was
There's
his
a thing
evil
about
brother, Brent mentioned.
yeah, his evil brother.
Larry Donald.
Much like
It's Larry Tharp's brother. I don't
what was the movie Dan was pimping earlier? He was a star in that movie, the something 3.
Super Troopers 3.
Super
yeah.
Troopers,
Whatever
yes.
it was. Super Troopers 3.
Yeah.
Aaron Donald, and many great defensive tackles over the year have been these undersized guys, especially in pass rush situations where you can bring them in fresh. You've been beating on them with big boys. They're tired, and you got these guys. And the thing that struck me about Gil Howard was his hop. I know that sounds strange, but he goes side to side very well, very well, and he's got this ability to be able to move side to side. That's going to create some problems for offensive line. I'm not predicting he's going to be great or anything, but to your point, Chris, the fact of the matter is the Lions need folks that can bring the pass rush on 3rd down. He doesn't have to be, a world beater, down after down, taking the beating. He's got to come in situationally and be able to put pressure up the middle on the quarterback and run to the edges and make tackles. So I think, check, right? You're looking for
Hmm.
somebody for situations.
Yeah. And he's going to get every chance in the world because, as Chris was lamenting a little bit ago, defensive tackle depth is a bit suspect so
Yep.
far in this team. I think we picked up 3 this weekend with the UDFA and then the 6th and 7th rounders, but two 3 tech guys basically, and one more of a nose tackle, which we'll talk about in the next show. But I love the kid. I love the story. He reminds me of Hassanin last year. He's this year's Hassanin. He's got an incredible
Mm,
backstory.
yeah.
Hopefully it turns out better than Hassanin with the injury that derailed his rookie year. But he's still here with us. So if the Lions like this kid and this kid comes in and I saw you flash the Raz up, lots of red and yellow on that thing. But you know what? What's not on those Raz score is the heart. There's no heart score in there, right?
Mm.
And motor, as Brent mentioned. So we'll see how this kid turns out. But he wants to give it his all. He wants to do it. And he mentioned his brother passed. He was actually one of 10 children
Wow.
in that family. So
Wasn't he the
um,
oldest?
I believe he was the oldest. That
Yeah.
is correct. Yeah. So Texas Tech. I make fun of the Big 12. Because it's kind of not the old Big 12, but you know what? That's a pass happy league. So, that's where he's going to make a mark for us. At that, what did I say in the draft? He's a little light in the pants. So, at that weight, he's not going to be a run stuffer, but we don't need him to be. We need him to be a situational pass rusher, like Brent said. Come in the back of the third, right before the fourth quarter, spell somebody and just go in and just wreak havoc and tire out those big offensive linemen. So that way, when the fourth quarter hits, then you bring in McNeil back in, or you move Hutch down there, or Moore down there, just to you let this kid come in and soften him up a little bit, right, on passing downs and give him a shot.
Hey, and I'll say this. My prediction is the NFL Rookie of the Year is going to be from Texas Tech and the Defensive Rookie of the Year. So take that one to the bank.
God, you
He
just
ain't playing
won't
for the Lions,
stop.
if
You
that's the
just won't.
case.
No, he's talking about the guy, the linebacker for the Dolphins.
I know he's
Brent's
probably
gonna Brent
jinxing this guy's
like
career.
he's just like Brent. I mean, we're gonna have to bring in Crystal. You need an intervent. You need a Malcolm Rodriguez intervention.
It's
This is
not Malcolm Rodriguez.
it's your
it's
man
Jacob.
love. Your
You gotta
man
get
love
his
for that
name right.
linebacker. What? Oh,
It-
no,
Malcolm Rodriguez.
Jacob
Hey,
Rodriguez. Yes.
yeah,
God.
but look, the Lions addressed every position they needed to address except for a stud linebacker. That's my only bemoaning here.
Yeah.
Well, 5 out of these 7 picks, guys, are defense. So, and a
Yeah.
number of defensive undrafted free agents. We did not cover the UDFAs. We will do that because I think there's at least 3 players that are really worth taking some time and talking about on that list. But we don't have enough time tonight because honestly, guys, the reason why we're talking about this stuff is because we felt so positively about this draft in general. Yeah, I mean, I'm not willing to give it maybe necessarily an A. Maybe next year I am. Let's see how this thing plays out. I think overall, most people to a man are saying that this draft, the talent level is lower than a lot of drafts, and certainly what they suspect. That it will be for next year is higher. Let's do a quick
NIL.
hit on the 7th round pick, Tyree West. So and to close it out, there's not a ton that we know about this player. He's a smaller player. They had him play at edge. They had him play at inside. Dan, he was pretty overwhelmed in his media availability, so we didn't get a ton from him. What's your take?
I'm just going to say this about Tyree West. This was the 6th pick of round 7. This was Brad Holmes taking a kid that we had interest in, and we actually visited with him a couple times. He got a lot of play during the visitation period from a lot of teams. This was Brad Holmes taking a UDFA who did not play a lot at the University of Tennessee and ensuring that he was able to get him to the Lions on their roster without having to fight against 10 or 12 other teams in the UDFA process. And if Brad wouldn't have done it at 6, I guarantee you one of those other teams in the next 20 picks after us, 30 picks after us would have absolutely signed this kid. Nothing uniquely special about him from the standpoint of his athleticism, of his production, but everybody seemed to like him. So, if you like somebody, why take a chance? Just like they said in Goodfellas. Yeah, why take a chance? Actually, it was Casino. Why take a chance?
Goodfellas was a little different. What are you prepared to do about it?
Yes.
What are you prepared to do about it?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I didn't know much about the player, and then when the pick came up, they showed highlights, and I remember just, it being a defensive tackle and him looking a little small, and then when I looked at his highlights, he was on the edge, and he's making dip moves like James Houston on the edge, and I was like, I thought this guy was a defensive tackle. He looks like an edge.
He's versatile.
Yeah, and so there you go. I think this is the key to. He's a football player, and he can play various positions. There's a lot of these guys though now. You've got a lot of these guys that are kind of smallish defensive tackles that can play in multiple positions. It's a jigsaw puzzle that our coaches are going to be that Kelvin Shepard and MCDC and everybody else are putting together for our defense. That we'll see how this thing plays out for sure, guys.
Well, we shored up everything except for defensive tackle. We've got some developmental guys there at defensive tackle, but I do have my concerns about our run defense. It can't be worse than last year because we weren't very good at rush defense. But
don't forget about the UDFAs that we did not talk about that were brought in. There's something to be said about this edge, Anthony Lucas out of USC. This guy was a 4 or 5 star guy coming out of high school, just hasn't put it together yet. So I mean, this is a flyer, but I mean, they gave a decent contract to a defensive lineman that I'm probably going to slaughter his name, but it's Aiden Kianaina out of Cal. Nice little UDFA contract. So there is some defensive lineman help coming there. He is. He's big.
He's a plugger.
Polynesian player, I believe, as well.
Yes.
So we'll see.
We'll catch those guys next week. We can give us a chance to spend a little more time with them and then see. I would hope by next week Brad's going to have the other 5 roster positions filled. So whether it's veterans or more UDFAs or guys, I mean, I'm already seeing guys around the league getting cut. As teams are bringing drafted players, UDFAs in, they're getting rid of their fringe veterans on their roster, churning the bottom of it. So somebody might shake loose. We have an interest in.
Nice. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Thanks for those who have hung with us along the ride for tonight. And we will be back 1 week from tonight, Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern. If you're listening to this on the replay, join us live. We'd love to, get your questions live, pull them in, answer those. While you're there, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, all of the stuff that they throw in front of you because it helps us. And as always, we like to say before we sign off on the show, go Lions.
Go Lions.
Busted outside left. Jameer down to the 10. Jameer to the 5. Jameer to the end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions.
Hand off Barry. Skirts to the left side. Breaks the tackle. And he will take it in. Touchdown.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions. That's what I'm talking about. It is caught. Touchdown.